My Experiments with Truth by Mahatma Gandhi. Picture this, a young lawyer in a crisp European suit, clutching his first-class train ticket. He's well-educated, a little awkward, fresh off the boat in a strange new country, ready to make something of himself. He settles into his comfortable seat, excited for the journey ahead. Then a railway official walks into his compartment and says something that will change everything. Not just for him, but for millions of people across the world. You need to move. Move to third class. That's where the colored people belong. The young lawyer politely explains he's paid for first class. The official doesn't care. Move, or we'll throw you out. He refuses. True to their word, a police constable arrives, grabs him by the arm, and physically shoves him off the train. His luggage lands on the platform with a thud. The train pulls away, leaving him completely alone in the bitter cold of a dark, empty waiting room. Shivering through that endless night, something ignites inside him. He wrestles with a question that will define everything that follows. Should I fight for what's right? Or should I just pack up and go home? Running away, he decides, would be pure cowardice. He has to stay, not just for himself, but for every single person facing this kind of humiliation, day after day after day. That shy young lawyer was Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, and that freezing night at Maritzburg Station in South Africa was the spark. The moment an ordinary, deeply flawed man began transforming into a Mahatma, a great soul. Today we're diving into one of the most powerful books of the 20th century, My Experiments with Truth, Gandhi's autobiography. But here's what makes it different. This isn't some chest-thumping list of achievements. Gandhi himself admits he's not even trying to write a real autobiography. Instead, what you get is brutally honest, almost uncomfortably humble. It's the story of his lifelong quest for Satya, truth. He called his life a series of experiments, and this book, think of it as his lab journal. By the time we're done today, you'll see how a man terrified of his own shadow taught himself to be fearless. You'll understand the simple but radical principles he used to challenge injustice, unite millions, and ultimately bring the mighty British Empire to its knees. And here's the most important part. You'll realize his journey wasn't that of a born saint. It was the journey of a regular human being, someone with doubts, failures, and embarrassing mistakes, who just kept working on himself, one honest experiment at a time. This is the blueprint for building a great soul. Gandhi's story doesn't start with a hero. It starts with a kid. A completely ordinary kid, born October 2nd, 1869, in Porbandar, India. Young Mohandas was, by his own admission, a mediocre student. Painfully shy, so shy he'd literally sprint home from school the second it ended, just to avoid talking to anyone. He was haunted by fears, ghosts, thieves, snakes. He couldn't sleep in the dark. His family was religious, but in this beautifully open way. His parents visited temples for different Hindu gods, and their friends were Muslim, Parsi, Jain, you name it. This early exposure taught him something crucial: respect for all faiths. But the biggest influence? His mother, Putlabai. She was practically a saint. She'd fast for days, sometimes vowing not to eat until she saw the sun. On cloudy days, the kids would watch the sky like hawks. If the sun peeked out, they'd race to tell her. Often by the time she got outside, it was gone again. She'd just smile and say, "God didn't want me to eat today." Her unshakable faith and self-control left a permanent mark on him. But even with this upbringing, young Mohandas wasn't immune to temptation. At 13, ridiculously early, even he admits, he got married to Kasturbai, a girl the same age. He remembers the wedding not as some solemn duty, but with childish excitement, fancy clothes, drums, and a strange girl to play with. Almost immediately, he turned into this possessive, jealous husband. He was consumed by what he calls a devouring passion. Kasturbai couldn't go to the temple or visit friends without his permission. But she had her own fire and flat out refused to be controlled. Bitter fights, long, cold silences. Looking back, Gandhi writes with deep regret about his lustful cruelty, realizing she was never his property. She was his equal partner. That lesson took him decades to truly learn. During high school, he fell in with a friend who was everything he wasn't: strong, athletic, fearless. This friend sold him on a powerful idea. The British could rule India because they ate meat. Meat would make Gandhi strong, brave, able to face down ghosts and serpents. There was even a popular poem going around: "Behold the mighty Englishman, he rules the Indian small, because being a meat-eater, he is 5 cubits tall." Gandhi, self-described coward and weakling, bought it. The idea of making Indians strong enough to overthrow the British blinded him to everything else. But there was a problem. His devout Vaishnava family thought meat-eating was unthinkable. If his parents found out, he was convinced they'd be, quote, shocked to death. So he did it in secret. By a lonely river he saw and tasted meat for the first time. Tough as leather, he could barely choke it down. That night? Horrible nightmare. A live goat bleeding inside his stomach. But his friend kept at it, cooking tastier dishes. Eventually, Gandhi started to enjoy these secret feasts. The lying, though, ate him alive. Every time he came home without an appetite, he had to lie to his mother. Finally, he made a call. Lying to his parents was worse than giving up meat. He decided not to touch it again during their lifetime. He'd chosen truth over his desire for reform. That wasn't his only struggle. He and a relative took up smoking, stealing cigarette butts and swiping coins from servants to buy their own. When the lack of freedom became unbearable, they decided, dramatically, to end it all. They got hold of poisonous datura seeds and went to a temple. But when push came to shove, their courage evaporated. They swallowed just 2 or 3 seeds, got scared of actually dying, and called the whole thing off. The lesson? Suicide is way easier to think about than to actually do. A more serious failing came at 15. To help his brother pay off a debt of 25 rupees, Gandhi stole a bit of gold from his brother's armlet. The guilt destroyed him. He knew he had to confess to his father, but he was too terrified, not of punishment, but of causing his father pain. So he wrote it out, what he'd done, why he did it, a request for punishment, and a promise never to steal again. Trembling, he handed the note to his father, who was lying sick in bed. His father read it slowly. As he did, tears, actual pearl drops, rolled down his cheeks, wetting the paper. He closed his eyes for a moment, then tore up the note and lay back down. Gandhi cried too, overwhelmed by his father's pain. But those weren't tears of anger. They were tears of love. Those pearl drops of love, Gandhi writes, cleansed my heart and washed my sin away. It was his first real lesson in ahimsa, nonviolence. A clean confession, combined with genuine resolve not to repeat the mistake, was the truest form of repentance. His father's silent, loving forgiveness didn't just make him feel safe. It deepened his affection beyond measure. It was an early, powerful experiment in the transformative power of truth. At 18, after passing his exams, Gandhi's family decided his best shot was to become a barrister in England. His mother was terrified. She'd heard stories. Young men in England got lost, took to meat and liquor. To calm her, Gandhi took a solemn vow before a Jain monk: no wine, no women, no meat. Only then did she let him go. London was overwhelming. He was shy, his English was shaky, and he had zero clue about European etiquette. A kind doctor gave him his first lessons. Don't touch other people's things. Don't ask intrusive questions like we do in India. Don't talk loudly. But his biggest problem? Food. He'd promised his mother he wouldn't eat meat, but a friend he was staying with argued relentlessly that surviving in England without it was impossible. What's the value of a vow made to an illiterate mother who doesn't understand life here? The friend pressed. Gandhi's answer was simple and firm. A vow is a vow. It cannot be broken. So he starved at lunch and dinner, living mostly on breakfast porridge. He'd walk 10 or 12 miles a day, searching desperately for a vegetarian restaurant. One day, he found one in Farringdon Street. Pure joy. In the window, he spotted a book for sale, A Plea for Vegetarianism by Salt. He bought it and went inside for his first satisfying meal since arriving. He devoured the book from cover to cover. It was a revelation. Until then, he'd avoided meat only because of his vow, secretly looking forward to the day he could eat it freely. Salt's book convinced him of the moral and health reasons for vegetarianism. From that day, he writes, I became a vegetarian by choice. Spreading vegetarianism became his mission. But that new conviction didn't stop his other experiments. To make up for being a clumsy vegetarian, he decided to become a polished English gentleman. Expensive clothes from fancy stores. A top hat. A 10-pound evening suit from Bond Street. He spent 10 minutes daily in front of a mirror, perfecting his hair part and learning to tie a tie. His ambition spiraled. Dancing lessons, French, elocution. He paid for all of it, but he was terrible at dancing. Couldn't keep time with the piano. He bought a violin to train his ear for Western music, hired yet another teacher for speaking. Then, one day, as he puts it, the bell of alarm rang in my ear. He realized how ridiculous it all was. He hadn't come to England to spend his life learning parlor tricks. How could dancing make a gentleman of me? He asked himself. If my character makes me a gentleman, great. Otherwise, I should drop the whole thing. He wrote to all his teachers, excusing himself from further lessons, and sold the violin. The whole infatuation lasted about 3 months. He still dressed carefully, but from that moment on he became a serious student. He began radically simplifying his life, tracking every penny, moved out of family lodgings into his own tiny room, cooking his own breakfast of oatmeal to save money. He lived on 1 shilling and 3 pence a day. This simple life, he discovered, harmonized my inward and outward life. It was more in keeping with my family's means. My life was certainly more truthful, and my soul knew no bounds of joy. After 3 years, he passed his exams and was called to the bar in June 1891. He'd studied the laws, but had no idea how to actually practice them. He was filled with terror. His first case in Bombay? Total disaster. He stood up to cross-examine a witness, but his heart sank. His head was spinning. He couldn't think of a single question. He sat down in shame, told his agent to hire another lawyer, and decided not to take another case until he had the courage to handle one. Disappointed, he returned to Rajkot, scraping by on drafting legal documents. There, he had his first shocking encounter with British arrogance. His brother was in trouble with a political agent, an officer Gandhi had met casually in England. His brother begged him to use that connection to put in a good word. Gandhi hated the idea but couldn't refuse. The officer was ice cold. When Gandhi pressed his brother's case, the Sahib grew impatient. "Your brother is an intriguer. I want to hear nothing more from you." When Gandhi persisted, the officer had a servant physically throw him out of the room. Furious, Gandhi wrote a note threatening legal action. The officer's reply was dismissive. A senior lawyer, the great Sir Feroza Shah Mehta, gave him brutal advice. "Tell Gandhi he's fresh from England and hot-blooded. If he wants to earn something and have an easy life here, let him tear up the note and pocket the insult." Gandhi had to swallow it. But he made a vow. "Never again will I put myself in such a false position. This shock," he says, "changed the course of my life." At this low point, a new opportunity appeared. A firm from Porbandar had a big case in South Africa and needed someone to help instruct their lawyer. They offered first-class return fare and £105 for 1 year. It was a chance to escape, see a new country, have a new experience. Without much thought, he accepted and got ready for South Africa. He arrived in Durban in May 1893. The client who received him, Abdullah Sheth, was puzzled. Gandhi, with his expensive European wardrobe and manners, seemed like a white elephant. On his second or third day, Abdullah took him to court. The magistrate stared at him and ordered him to remove his turban. Gandhi refused and walked out. He quickly learned about the vicious prejudice in South Africa. Indians were divided into groups. Muslim merchants calling themselves Arabs, Hindu and Parsi clerks, and the largest group, indentured laborers. These laborers were called girmitias, a corruption of agreement. Because they were the majority, all Indians, regardless of status, were contemptuously called coolies or Sammis. Gandhi was a coolie barrister. The merchants were coolie merchants. The turban was a symbol of self-respect. Removing it meant pocketing an insult. He considered wearing an English hat instead, but Abdullah warned, "If you wear an English hat, you'll be mistaken for a waiter." Gandhi saw the wisdom, wrote to the press defending the turban, and gained unexpected notoriety as an, quote, unwelcome visitor. A week later, he was sent to Pretoria for the case. He booked a first-class seat. The train reached Maritzburg around 9 p.m. A railway official entered and told him to move to the van compartment. "But I have a first-class ticket," he said. "Doesn't matter. You must go to the van compartment." When he refused, a constable was called. He was pushed out of the train, his luggage thrown after him. He sat alone in the dark, freezing waiting room. His overcoat was in his luggage, but he didn't dare ask for it, afraid of being insulted again. That night, he made the decision that would ignite everything. The hardship was just a symptom of the deep disease of color prejudice. He had to try to root out the disease, even if it meant suffering. Running back to India would be cowardice. The next leg was by stagecoach. The man in charge, the, quote, leader, refused to seat him inside with white passengers, making him sit outside next to the driver. Later, wanting to smoke, the leader spread a dirty sack on the footboard and ordered Gandhi, "Sami, you sit on this." It was too much. "I will not," Gandhi said, "but I'm prepared to sit inside." The man came down hard, boxing his ears, trying to drag him down. Gandhi clung to the brass rails, determined to hold on. The other passengers, moved to pity, intervened. "Let him alone. Don't beat him. He's right." The man stopped, but growled, "Just wait till we get to Standerton. I'll show you." In Standerton, Indian friends received him with their own bitter stories. The next morning, He was given a seat inside and reached Johannesburg safely. There, he tried to get a room at the Grand National Hotel. The manager politely told him, "I'm very sorry, we're full." An Indian friend laughed at his naivete. "How did you ever expect to be admitted to a hotel?" The final part was by train to Pretoria. He was warned that first and second class tickets were never issued to Indians in the Transvaal. But Gandhi was determined. Dressed in his frock coat and tie, he went to the station master, introduced himself as a barrister, and made his case. The station master, a Dutchman, was sympathetic. "I want to give you a ticket, on one condition. If the guard asks you to move to third class, you won't involve me." Gandhi agreed. On the train, the guard angrily signaled him to move. But an English passenger spoke up. "Don't you see he has a first-class ticket?" "I don't mind at all his traveling with me." The guard muttered, "If you want to travel with a coolie, what do I care?" and left. He had arrived in Pretoria, but the trials continued. One day, walking on the footpath past President Kruger's house, a policeman, without warning, pushed and kicked him into the street. A friend, Mr. Coates, witnessed it and offered to testify in court. "You needn't be sorry," Gandhi told him. "I've made it a rule not to go to court over personal grievances." The policeman later apologized, but Gandhi never walked that street again. Why should I unnecessarily court another kick? The incident deepened his commitment to improving conditions for Indian settlers. But his primary duty was the case he'd come for, a complicated 40,000-pound suit between two relatives, Dada Abdullah and Tayyib Sheth. As he studied the facts, he saw his client had a strong case. But he also saw that continuing the litigation would ruin both parties. He felt his duty was to befriend both parties and bring them together. He worked tirelessly to broker a compromise. Finally, he persuaded them to go to arbitration. Dada Abdullah won, but Tayyib Sheth couldn't pay the full £37,000 at once. It was an unwritten law among Porbandar Memons that death was preferable to bankruptcy. Gandhi then faced the harder task of persuading his own client to accept installment payments over a very long period. Dada Abdullah agreed. Both parties were satisfied, and their reputations grew. Gandhi's joy was boundless. "I'd learned the true practice of law. I'd learned to find the better side of human nature and to enter men's hearts. I realized the true function of a lawyer was to unite parties torn apart." A large part of his 20 years of legal practice was spent bringing about private compromises in hundreds of cases. Just as the case concluded and he was preparing to return home, he spotted a newspaper paragraph about a bill to strip Indians of their voting rights. He saw it as the first nail in our coffin. The Indian merchants gathered for his farewell party urged him to stay and fight. "Abdullah Sheth, you must keep Gandhi by here." He agreed to stay one more month. The farewell party became a working committee. That 1 month stretched into 20 years. He founded the Natal Indian Congress on May 22, 1894. He drafted petitions, collected thousands of signatures, and informed the public in India and England about conditions in Natal. He settled down, establishing a household and legal practice. He had to face the color bar in his own profession. The Law Society of Natal opposed his application to be admitted as an advocate, arguing the bar should be predominantly European. The Chief Justice overruled them, stating, "The law makes no distinction between white and colored people." But as soon as he was sworn in, the Chief Justice ordered, "You must now remove your turban." Gandhi complied. He knew he could have resisted, but he wanted to save his strength for fighting bigger battles. It was a lesson in the beauty of compromise. His work brought him into contact with indentured laborers, particularly through the case of Balasundaram, a Tamil man brutally beaten by his master. Gandhi had him transferred to a kinder employer and came to be seen as a friend of the laborers, whose troubles now poured into his office. This led him to fight the £3 tax imposed on ex-indentured Indians, a fierce campaign that would last 20 years before finally succeeding. These years were a period of intense spiritual searching. Christian friends in Pretoria tried to convert him, giving him books and urging him to accept Jesus as the only Savior. He read the Bible. The Sermon on the Mount went straight to his heart, but he couldn't accept that Jesus was the only Son of God, or that salvation was possible only through him. Muslim friends encouraged him to study Islam. Confused, he wrote to his spiritual mentor in India, the poet Raichand Bhai, who advised patience and deeper study of Hinduism. He read Tolstoy's The Kingdom of God is Within You, which overwhelmed him and left an abiding impression. This religious quest, awakened by his Christian friends, took him down a path they never intended. During the Zulu Rebellion in 1906, while serving in an ambulance corps he'd formed, his convictions about brahmacharya celibacy took deep root. Marching through solemn solitudes, he pondered. If he wanted to devote himself completely to serving humanity, he had to give up desire for children and wealth. He couldn't live both after the flesh and the spirit. Soon after, he took a lifelong vow of brahmacharya, with his wife's consent. He writes that the freedom and joy that came after taking the vow were unlike anything he'd experienced before. It was a sure shield against temptation. Just as this vow prepared him, the principle of Satyagraha was born. The word, meaning truth force or soul force, was coined to describe the Indian struggle against injustice. It was a new weapon, based not on violence, but on truth and self-suffering. The final piece of his transformation came from a book. On a train from Johannesburg to Durban, his friend Henry Pollack gave him John Ruskin's Unto This Last. The book gripped him. He couldn't sleep that night. He determined to change his life according to its ideals. He understood its teachings as three simple principles. 1. The good of the individual is contained in the good of all. 2. A lawyer's work has the same value as a barber's. Everyone has the same right to earn their livelihood. 3. A life of labor, the life of the farmer and craftsman, is the life worth living. He'd known the first. He'd dimly realized the second. The third had never occurred to him. The book made it as clear as daylight that the second and third were contained in the first. He woke with the dawn, ready to act. He immediately proposed moving Indian Opinion, the journal he ran, to a farm where everyone would labor, draw the same wage, and work the press in their spare time. This led to the founding of Phoenix Settlement in 1904, a community based on simple living, manual labor, and self-reliance. Later, he founded Tolstoy Farm, where he further developed his experiments in diet, nature cure, and education. He believed character building was the proper foundation of education, best imparted not through books, but through the teacher's life and character. In 1914, after 21 years in South Africa, his work there was done. The Satyagraha struggle had ended, and his mentor, Gokhale, called him home. As he prepared to leave, the community showered him with expensive gifts, gold, silver, even diamonds. That night, he couldn't sleep. How could he, simplifying his life and urging others to reject materialism, accept these things? He decided he couldn't. He persuaded his wife and children to agree and created a trust dedicating all the gifts to community service. He arrived in India in 1915, now a transformed man. His shyness remained. At his first major public speech in Bombay, his voice was so low another man had to read it for him, but his conviction was unshakable. As promised to Gokhale, he spent a year traveling India, mostly in third class, to understand the real condition of his country. The filth and overcrowding of the trains, and authorities' indifference to the poor, pained him deeply. In 1915, he founded the Satyagraha ashram at Kotrub, near Ahmedabad. Within months, it faced a severe test. He was asked to accept an untouchable family. He agreed. Immediately, all financial support stopped, and rumors of social boycott spread. Things came to a head when his manager said, "We're out of funds." "There's nothing for next month," Gandhi replied quietly. "Then we'll move to the untouchables quarter." Just then, unexpected help arrived. A wealthy merchant he'd met only once drove up, placed 13,000 rupees in his hands, and drove away without a word. But the storm outside was nothing compared to the storm within. His own wife, Kasturbai, and other women in the ashram resented the untouchable family's presence. It was a valuable, painful lesson in the deep roots of prejudice. Soon after, he was drawn into his first major Satyagraha campaign in India. An agriculturist from Champaran, Rajkumar Shukla, followed him across the country, begging him to see the plight of indigo sharecroppers being exploited by British planters. When Gandhi arrived in Champaran and began investigating, he was ordered to leave the district. He refused. Summoned to court, he pleaded guilty to disobeying the order, explaining he did so not from disrespect for law but in obedience to the higher law of our being, the voice of conscience. To everyone's surprise, the lieutenant governor ordered the case withdrawn. It was the country's first direct lesson in civil disobedience. The inquiry proceeded, the century-old exploitative system was abolished, and the stain of indigo was washed away. From Champaran, he was drawn to a labor dispute with mill workers in Ahmedabad. When striking workers began losing resolve, he undertook a fast, not to coerce mill owners, but to rally the workers. It was his first fast for a public cause, and it succeeded in bringing settlement. Then came the Kheda Satyagraha, where he guided peasants refusing to pay taxes due to crop failure. During this struggle, he realized he'd made a Himalayan miscalculation. He'd called for civil disobedience before people were fully trained in truth and nonviolence. He understood a Satyagrahi must first learn willing and respectful obedience to state laws before earning the right to disobey them. He immediately suspended the campaign. He was recovering from severe illness when news of the Rowlatt Bills, laws allowing imprisonment without trial, startled him. One morning, in that twilight between sleep and waking, an idea came: call for a nationwide hartal, a general strike, a day of fasting and prayer to launch Satyagraha. On April 6, 1919, all of India, from one end to the other, observed a complete hartal. It was, he wrote, a most wonderful spectacle. But peaceful protest soon gave way to violence in Delhi, Amritsar, and Ahmedabad. On his way to Punjab to calm things, Gandhi was arrested and sent back to Bombay. News of his arrest sparked more riots. He was horrified. He suspended Satyagraha, declaring he wouldn't lead a mass movement until people learned the lesson of peace. The violence culminated in the Jallianwala Bagh massacre in Amritsar. Gandhi was finally allowed into Punjab and appointed to the Congress Committee investigating the atrocities. What he heard filled him with deep pain. At the same time, the Khilafat movement was gaining momentum. Indian Muslims fighting to protect the Ottoman Caliphate. Gandhi saw it as a golden opportunity for Hindu-Muslim unity. He argued that if the Muslim cause was just, Hindus were bound to support them. At a Caliphate conference, he first proposed, quote, non-cooperation. This idea took shape at the Nagpur Congress in 1920, where he successfully passed a resolution for non-violent non-cooperation to achieve Swaraj, or self-rule. Here, he also led the charge to reform the Congress Constitution, transforming it from an elite club into a mass-based organization with real machinery for action. But the most potent symbol of this new movement wasn't born in a committee room. It came from a humble search for a simple tool. For years, Gandhi had been looking for a spinning wheel. He believed if India could spin its own yarn and weave its own cloth, it could break economic dependence on Britain and provide work for starving millions. After a long search, the spinning wheel was found in a village in Baroda. Soon, the hum of the charkha filled the ashram, and khadi, hand-spun, hand-woven cloth, became the uniform of freedom. It was the thread that would stitch a nation together. Gandhi's story, as he tells it, ends here in the early 1920s, on the cusp of the great national movements he would lead. His life from that point, he says, was so public there was little left to tell. But the experiments never stopped. The final experiment, the ultimate test of his faith, was still to come. But for that, you have to look beyond the pages of this book, to the history of a nation he helped create. So what do we take from this incredible journey? What's the secret hidden in Gandhi's My Experiments with Truth? Here's the most powerful lesson. Greatness isn't something you're born with. It's a discipline you build. Gandhi wasn't born a Mahatma. He was born shy, fearful, and deeply flawed. The person he became was the result of a lifetime of conscious, deliberate, sometimes painful self-improvement. His life was a laboratory, and his own soul was the subject. He experimented with diet, not just for health, but to conquer his passions. He experimented with possessions, giving up wealth and insurance not because he was a natural ascetic, but to cultivate deeper faith in God and a spirit of non-attachment. He experimented with relationships, learning to see his wife as an equal and all humanity as his family. At the heart of it all was his unwavering devotion to truth. For Gandhi, truth wasn't just about honesty. It was the ultimate principle, another name for God. His search for truth led him to ahimsa, or nonviolence, because he realized you can't harm another person without harming the truth within them and within yourself. To see the spirit of truth, he wrote, one must be able to love the meanest of creation as oneself. This is why his quest for self-purification drew him into politics. He believed religion and politics were inseparable, because a person devoted to truth can't stand aside when injustice is happening. You can't separate your inner life from your outer responsibilities. How can we apply these grand ideas to our own lives? We don't have to lead nations or challenge empires. The beauty of Gandhi's message is it starts with the smallest steps. Here are a few thoughts. First, start your own small experiment. Gandhi's journey began with simple acts: confessing a theft to his father, keeping a vow to his mother, trying to wash his own collars. Choose one small thing in your life that isn't quite right: a habit you want to change, a fear you want to face, a difficult truth you need to speak. Turn it into an experiment. For the next 7 days, approach it with honesty and discipline, and just observe what happens, not just around you, but within you. Second, practice service without expectation. Gandhi's life was defined by his spirit of service. It started small, nursing a leper who came to his door, helping at a charitable hospital for a few hours each morning. Find one small way to serve someone else this week, a friend, family member, stranger, without any thought of reward or recognition. See how it shifts your perspective. Finally, ask yourself the question that guided his entire life. What is my truth? What are the principles I hold most dear? In a world constantly asking us to compromise, to bend, to fit in, what are the things you won't compromise on? Knowing your own truth is the first step to living a life of purpose. That was a summary of my experiments with truth by Mahatma Gandhi. We've journeyed through the key moments of his transformation today, but honestly, a summary can only take you so far. The real magic of this book happens when you read it yourself. It's in the quiet moments when a particular story or simple, honest reflection hits you in a way you didn't expect. This summary is designed to help you decide if this book is worth your time. If anything we've talked about today has resonated with you, I encourage you to grab a copy. Reading it isn't just about learning history. It's an experience that can genuinely change the way you see yourself, your struggles, and your potential for growth. The link to the book is in the description below. Also, if you found this journey valuable, please show your support by hitting that like button and subscribing to the channel. That way, you won't miss our next deep dive into another life-changing book here on Billionaire's Bookshelf. Let's keep learning and growing together.